So let's dig into diarrhea and constipation. Yesterday we talked about how stress affects your gut, and today is really making sure that you understand what the diarrhea and the constipation can be telling you, and what you can be doing about it, because most of you here have some form or another. You may just be having some indigestion. You may have where you're running to the washroom all the time. We have people in my program where they are having to take time off of work, where you're on calls and you can't make it, you got to book off work so that you can go home and be on the toilet. We have people that actually go to the other extreme, where they've actually brought puppy pads with them to work, so that when they're on scene, they were homicide investigations, and when they were on scene, if they really could not get to a bathroom, they could, in the back of the truck, use the puppy pads. Like, it gets bad, you guys. Like, this is not... It gets where you get that indigestion. It gets where you get a rumbly tummy. It gets where you're starting to watch the foods that you're eating because of the payback. And it's just, it keeps snowballing. And there's a bunch of reasons for it. So let's dig into each one individually first. So constipation. So when you are stressed, as I said yesterday, you have two branches of your nervous system that we talk about often. You have your stress, and then you have your resting. When you are in your stress nervous system, what happens is that your body switches into everything that it needs for fight or flight. So you do not need to be sitting and having a big meal or going to the bathroom when you are, fighting that big fight. Your body doesn't know the difference between putting on your uniform, preparing on your shift, or being in the middle of a tough physical call. It doesn't know the difference. So your body starts to shut down the systems that it doesn't need when it's in a resting state. And one of those systems is your colon. So you end up in your colon where it's supposed to be like moving around, but it actually doesn't. So it can do one of two things. It can actually get where it's squeezed all the time, which makes it smaller and harder to get things through, or it can just go lax. And then when you're constipated as well, quite often with water, you can be drinking tons and tons of water, but if you kind of think of it where something is super, super dry, it's so dry it doesn't absorb. So think of a garden that hasn't been watered for a while. When you actually pour water on it, the water pretty much just falls off of it, right? So it doesn't absorb. You have to put a little bit on, let it get a bit wet, and then you keep adding a little bit more and a little bit more, and that way the water can start to absorb. Well, your colon is the same as that. And as we talked about yesterday as well, when you're stressed as well, on top of the colon losing its motility, your gut also slows down. So the gastric juices that are there that are supposed to be breaking down the food are not breaking it down. So you're getting food that is not broken down enough. So it's larger chunks as well that need to be absorbing the water that you're drinking. And the larger chunks are going into a colon that isn't moving properly. So this causes a whole slew of problems. And then you end up as well with the gut lining that end up dry. So think of going down a water slide that doesn't have any water on it. It takes a longer time for you to get down to the bottom. You have to push, you have to move, you have to do all these things. So that is where constipation comes in with stress. And then we get into the whole other spectrum, which is diarrhea. And diarrhea is, it's that other where everything is like squeezed in your colon. It's a whole slew of issues in your digestive system. You end up, which we talked about yesterday as well, where when the acids aren't doing what they're supposed to do, they're not breaking down the foods properly, it starts damaging your small intestine. And that starts then changing where all the bacteria is in your gut. And you start getting an overgrowth of a lot of bad bacteria. And a lot of that ends up going either with constipation or it causes you to have diarrhea. And then you get all of that bloating, you can get pain in your abdomen, all kinds of things. Now, the thing that's really interesting about this is that you may think that you have constipation. And this was me. You may think that you have diarrhea. You may, what my situation was, and I do hear this quite often from many of you, where it might be like a certain time into your sleep. For me, I usually wake up around 5 to 6 a.m., but it started being early and earlier that I had to get up and rush to the bathroom. It started getting to the point where it was hitting at 3 o'clock, 2 in the morning. And when that is happening, when you are really having to rush to the washroom a lot, the thing is that you're supposed to be pooping out in a day from your elbow, your whole forearm. So from your elbow to your hand is how much. But if you're having diarrhea that is just a certain amount, but it's not this amount throughout your day, then what is most likely happening, which was my case, is that I was actually constipated. So my body had been constipated for such a long time, where it was basically to the point where I was getting so backed up that my body was starting to tell me that that it needed to evacuate some because the pressure was getting too much in the colon. So when the pressure gets too much in the colon, your body goes into an evacuation process where it will like push it all out in diarrhea, but it doesn't push all of it out. So if you're having diarrhea, like you might be constipated for a day or two, and then all of a sudden you're like in the bathroom constantly. Or it could be the case like I had, where it's like every single day you're running to the washroom, it's waking you up in your sleep. It could be during the day, but it's not your forearm's worth. It's not the amount that you actually need to be expelling in a day. Then the odds are that you are constipated, but your body is having that diarrhea just to relieve the pressure valve is what it's doing. So you have those three. You have constipation, you have diarrhea, and you have the constipation that is diarrhea. And they are very, very synonymous. I actually didn't have a lot of gut health stuff in my program when it started a few years ago. And I brought it in because pretty much every single person in my program, once we got their energy up, we got the sleep on track, we got the hormones balanced, we got their moods regulated and all of that, we're like, okay, now what do we do about my gut? And I'm like, I didn't realize that it is a stress sign, as we've been talking about, but it hits almost every single one of you at certain points. It could be that your acids are off a little bit, which, as we were talking about, a lot of people, they're told to actually start going on antacids and stuff. We start thinking that when we're feeling the acids coming up, that it's actually too high of acids. But what happens is in our digestive system, when things go off, when you're really stressed, it actually opens up one of the sphincters before it's supposed to. So acids do come up, but the odds are that you're most likely low in acids. Most people do test very, very low in stomach acids. So these are big things that people do have in when you're stressed. You have the diarrhea, you have the constipation, you have the mix of two, and you have acid issues. And making sure that you can get those in check is so important, because your gut is responsible for 90% of your serotonin production. 90%. That is your happy, feel-good hormone. That's the one so many are on anti-anxiety, antidepressants, because your serotonin levels are so low. And that's where we dig into the gut. But as we were talking about yesterday, if your stress nervous system is so taxed that it is constantly throwing off your colon and the gut, like we started talking about here today, then you can do everything to fix your gut. But if that nervous system is not in check, then you'll be able to get some relief in your gut, but you won't be able to finish it. So it's kind of like a package deal. You need to really make sure that the nervous system is connected, or is on track, where you can switch it on and off, in and out of that stress state, that hypervigilant state that you do need on certain shifts, but you don't need at home, you don't need when you're doing your reports, you don't need it in those other times. So learning how to shift that on and off is key first, and then you can start digging into more of the gut issues and keep working on them together. All right. Anybody has any questions? Let me know. Let me know in the bottom if you have diarrhea, constipation, indigestion, if you've got a combination of both diarrhea and constipation, and how long it's been hitting you in your career. And then kind of track back. I know some people can actually track a certain trauma as to when they happened. Some people it was a promotion. Some people it was certain admin stress. Sometimes it was things at home, divorces, having another child. It can be actually happy, good stresses, but stresses are stresses on our body. So try to think back as to when it started from you, and then think back to the year before and what happened the year before your gut got to that point. It can also be accumulation during your shift. Okay, so let me know how many years it's been a struggle for you and how long you've actually been on the job, so we can actually see that full picture. All right, tomorrow, stick around, because we are going to go over how to be eating on a shift schedule. And that is very different, because when you're there's so many different situations as well. Like, you guys can't just eat at regular times. So there's a lot of tips and tricks that we are definitely going to go over then. So tune in tomorrow to that. And any questions, just write them down.